Welcome back to the Lumos Learning Podcast. I'm Jacob Carey, an education consultant here at Lumos, and I'm joined by.
My name is William Carter. I'm also an education consultant. I'm a sales rep with Lumos Learning.
And so today we wanted to record this podcast to talk about the importance of assessments and letting that inform instruction, as well as showcase some of the ways Lumos tries to tackle that challenge and make that easier for teachers. So, we're going to be looking at both formative and summative assessments that you can use inside your classroom to, gauge student understanding and inform instruction.
Did you have something to add there? Okay. No, yeah, so we're both former educators and we both know that one of the things that was always pushed on both of us is meeting your formative assessment goals and making sure your summative assessments are the end target of a semester or end target of a school year. And so regardless of the idea of teaching to the test or not, there is a understood through line from the beginning of the school year to its key assessment hurdles as you head towards that final state test. And you have to jump through those hoops, regardless of if you want to or not. Uh, Jacob, do you have any thoughts on that kind of underlying requirement of teachers?
Yeah, I mean, both of us being former educators, we saw how important assessments were pushed on educators, but not just, using assessments and over testing kids, but actually making meaningful assessments that can inform instruction, change the trajectory of a class, and influence the growth that we see in our students. I mean, the whole idea of starting with the end in mind, we try not to talk about, teaching to the test or anything like that, but we still want to know where our kids are supposed to be, and then we need to gauge how they're doing along that path to getting to that final point. And assessments is how we do that.
And yeah, I would definitely agree. I think the biggest hurdle for me when I was teaching was creating both assessments, formative and summative, in my class that actually mattered. There were times where I would create assessments. I thought they were amazing. I was really proud of them, and then my admin got it, and they're like, "This looks nothing like the state assessment. This looks
Right.
nothing like what your lead teacher's doing." And I would have to go back to the drawing board. Um, and so I know that's a pressure, especially on a lot of newer teachers, is trying to find quality assessments that not only match the difficulty spikes that a state assessment is going to ask them, but actually challenge the student to better themselves and meet the next hurdle. Do you have any thoughts on that and your experience in the classroom?
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't a teacher for a terribly long time, so I definitely understand that beginning teacher feel because that was the majority of the time I was an educator. And you're trying to balance learning how to manage a classroom, learning how to teach, because no matter, what sort of prep program you go through, there's a lot of learning to do on the job. And at the same time, you're trying to keep up with these assessment requirements. You're making things from scratch. And it can be a huge challenge to really not only just align itself with the end of, grade test or the end of course test, but just aligning with the standards themselves, finding good, high rigor questions that, like you said, challenge the students, but also give you some meaningful data on how they're going to perform at the end of the year. It's a huge hurdle to overcome, especially for those beginning teachers.
Yeah, and I definitely would concur. Uh, well, since both of us have transitioned out of the classroom into working with Lumos, obviously the pivot point here is how does Lumos actually respond to this? So, do you have any initial thoughts before we kind of dive into the concept of how Lumos addresses these core issues?
Yeah, I mean, like we've already, kind of mentioned the main challenge points here, but, finding something that aligns itself to the rigor of both the standards and the state tests, align themselves to what's going to be on the test, and, um, you know, for a beginning teacher, grading is also an issue. Getting things graded in a timely manner so that you can actually use the data to inform instruction. It's often overlooked how a quick turnaround on that it makes, you can have the best assessment possible, but if you don't have it graded and you don't have that data, how are you going to use that to inform your instruction? And, we try to tackle those really well here at Lumos, and we push home by a team that's made up of largely educators or former educators. We know those challenges, and we push towards giving some solutions for those.
Yeah, and I definitely that's what I've kind of prepared for us. I've got a little bit of a sampling of what we offer. Do you mind if I share?
Yeah, go ahead.
Wonderful. So what I've prepared is just a snapshot of what we offer. And this is the for the NJSLA for New Jersey, but we have it for your state as well. But what is important to understand here is part of the heart of Lumos is not just making sure students have quality materials or making sure teachers have data. We understand that the teacher's job is extremely difficult. And as people like as Jacob said, when you're trying to do everything at once, time is everything. And so our job is to make a teacher's life as easy as possible, but also support what they're already doing in the classroom. And so what we've designed here is to be as quick and efficient and time saving as possible. So what we're going to kind of address first is formative assessment. So formative assessments, Jacob, do you have any like a little blurb about what a formative
Yeah.
assessment would be?
So a formative assessment really is that, middle of the way sort of test. You're not trying to see full mastery necessarily with a formative assessment. You're trying to see where are my students at so that I can make decisions, that I can, fix things that are going awry and misunderstandings so that when we get to the end goal, we know that we've done everything we can to help close those gaps. So, I mean, this can take the place in the classroom of things like a teacher asking students to raise their hand if they're understanding, keep it down if they're not quite sure what's going on. It can be short quizzes, check-ins at the beginning of the day, exit tickets. I mean, the list of formative assessments goes on and on for the ways that they can take place in the classroom.
Yeah, and one of my favorites when I was teaching was unit tests. And
Mhm.
so maybe not doing every single test counting as a formative assessment, but every two or three tests and covering like an overarching theme or an overarching standard grouping or domain. This is where Lumos shines bright. So let's say, for instance, you got through this domain right here, number and operations in base 10. Obviously you would want to have some kind of understanding. Are my students on board with this, or is there some critical errors?
Right.
And so what we've designed is the ability to say, okay, we've got some great worksheets, some lessons here directly aligned with your state standards. If you want to create something custom, you could say, do this. You could go to the little eyeball here, and what this does is lets you see the questions we've created that are 100% standards aligned. So you can see how it aligns to your state standards. You can see what the question is. And what the really cool thing is, if you want to create a little custom assessment, you're going to be able to build a custom assignment. Let's choose three from that little area. And then we're going to come down here. And now we're going to build a custom assignment pulling from all the standards in this domain, still aligned, but different standard. And now we're creating a really quality custom assignment. Now, the best part, we kind of hinted at this a minute ago. New teachers always struggle with finding resources that are not only aligned, but actually
Mhm.
have the same feel and difficulty as a state assessment. As soon as you create this, as soon as it gets sent to the student, it's going to look exactly like your state assessment. And so it's going to provide that immersion, and it's teacher created. So it's custom met to the needs of your students. So you don't have to try to adapt your lessons to a test. You can meet the students where they're at with a custom formative assessment.
Yeah, and I think something else that Lumos does really well for this is, you have all of these custom assessments, but we also have features for collaboration with other teachers. Say you're trying to see how you're pacing compared to the teacher across the hall or the teacher in the other building. these can be built and shared along with those other educators to really make sure everybody's keeping pace and see what's going, awry in some classes and what may be successful. And teachers are able to like share the tips and tricks for how to teach these to their kids, especially if, a specific educator is struggling in a specific standard.
Yeah, I would agree. I think one of the things that has always been a benefit to the teaching world is veteran teachers passing down their quality materials. So if you have a teacher on our platform that either created custom assessments or maybe uploaded their PDFs and created a custom assignment, which we can do on our platform, you can pass it along to your other teachers in the school, and now they're able to use it, and the department is sharing resources. The other area I wanted to quickly mention, maybe you're like, oh, I don't really need any custom assessments. My school provides that. Well, Jacob mentioned that a minute ago. Maybe you only need a formative end of day assessment. Maybe you just need a quick daily check-in. You need something like that for your lesson plans. You can take any one of these digital worksheets down here, aligned to your standard. Maybe you taught on place value today in class. You could take 3 questions, 5 questions from that, turn it into a bell work. It's going to simulate still the state assessment. It's going to be directly standards aligned, and it's going to get you that quality data. So it's very versatile and very quick to meet all of the requirements that your school is dictating for you.
Yeah, I mean, the resources are here. Like Will mentioned earlier, we want to make this as easy on our teachers as possible while still giving them the power to, control what sort of data they're getting and giving them the power to make the decisions moving forward from that.
Yeah, I would definitely I concur. The other bear that we have to talk about is summative. Summative is the end of semester, end of school year mountain that every student, every teacher has to climb. And 9 times out of 10, when I was teaching, once you got on the other side of it, there was low confidence anyways. You're like, I got
Mhm.
through it, but man, I don't know how they did. you're
Yeah.
you're concerned and you're like, I don't know if I prepared them properly. I don't know if they were ready. Um, do you have any thoughts on that, or maybe how Lumos
Yeah.
can handle that?
Yeah, I mean, just to for our newer educators who, may be confused with the terminology, whereas formative assessments were that, middle of the road check uh, to see how it's doing. Uh, the summative assessment is like our Super Bowl, right? That's where we uh, get to the end of the course. We've taught everything we're supposed to teach, and we're trying to look for mastery at this point when we reach the summatives. So these are typically the things that we'll see educators take as grades to really showcase, how much learning has happened. Um, but like you said, it's a real challenge because the ultimate summative assessment is that end of year test. And after that, teachers will wait for months sometime to get results back. Whereas Lumos, works really hard to simulate those summative tests, to give ways for teachers figuring out how students are going to do. And, we even make it easily accessible to view all of this data and take it as grades if that's in the teacher's interest as well.
Yeah, you hit the nail right on the head. The ultimate summative assessment is your state test. And so how Lumos handles it is that for every account that you purchase with us, you're going to get access to 2 simulation assessments. And what's the key word, that $1 million word, is simulation. So when a student takes this practice assessment, it is summative. It's going to cover all the core standards and 2 other big things. First off, it's going to look just like your state assessment. It's going to feel just like it. But the other part of it, as because we base it off of the blueprint from your state department, the blueprint's always going to say something like, oh, there's going to be standard 3.5. There's going to be 5 questions for 3.5. We've already built it in there. You don't have to worry about anything like that. And so these practice assessments, these simulations are going to be the the guideline, the hallmark of your school year, because it's going to give you that concrete data immediately. As soon as they complete it, you've got data, and you know predictively, hey, my students took this one. 3 months later, they took practice test 2. Now I know, hey, these students are probably going to pass the state test. These students are going to struggle. These students might not. And now you know how to dictate your remediation and your intervention. And that is a life-saving tool for new teachers.
Yes, and I keep going back to this, but summative assessments, especially when we're simulating something like the end of year test, are long and you know, coming from a poorer school that didn't quite have all the funding it may have needed, we couldn't always afford Scantrons or didn't have a one-to-one ratio for, laptops and students. So having this in place where a student can log into a computer, even if it's in a computer lab for a day, take this simulation, and then you're instantly, like you said, well, getting that feedback that you can use to inform that vital remediation period at the end of the year, right before state testing happens. I mean, it can be a make or break situation for a student, being under proficiency or being at proficiency or even excelling above proficient, just because you're able to get that quick data that turns around so quickly and that teachers are able to leverage to inform that instruction.
Yeah. And I think the thing that I'm hearing, probably a bunch of other teachers watching this they're thinking, well, I like what you have to offer, but I have very custom things I need to do in my classroom, or I have all this stuff that I've made for years prior that's paper pencil, or it's, a PDF. How do I fit into that? Well, we don't have time to show the full breadth of it, but when you get down here to my assessments, you can actually create your own custom assessment. You can upload your own PDFs, upload your own files, put readings in here, and create custom assignments and directly link it to one of the standards. So if you're teaching a standard and your students need to read the Crucible, you take some segments of that, you put some questions up, you can directly link it to the standards you're covering, and now the students are going to get an assignment. It's going to look like the state test. It's going to have your materials, and it's going to be one-to-one with your state standards. So you're still going to be able to track all that data, and you're going to get the custom assignments you've created and you spent so much time on in the program.
Yes, it's an invaluable resource um, that, teachers will never take for granted. Just having the ability to assign these resources to create custom things for their specific requirements. Um, it can change the entire sort of setting for assessments in the classroom. But I want to move on, Will, to talking about, we've talked about the assessments, how to create them, all that kind of stuff. But let's talk about, where do we get the data from in the Lumos platform?
Excellent question and excellent segue to make sure we stayed on task. So like we've been saying, I'm a former educator, and I don't know how many times I got to a meeting with my admin and they're like, "Mr. Carter, where's your data?
Hmm.
Where's your information?" And I would say it's somewhere. I've got things, I've got things I'm grading, and I'm weeks or two behind. Well, that is alleviated right here for several ways. First off, data is instantaneous. As soon as a student completes an assignment, you've got data, and you're going to be able to check it and follow along with it. The other thing is we have a library of really great reports that are going to break that data down into so many different avenues. And you're going to be able to print it off. You're going to be able to check it. You're going to be able to take it to a data meeting, take it to a district meeting. The other thing is for your own personal growth, you're going to be able to choose an assignment that a student's done. Let's say I chose one of the practice assessments.
Hmm.
You're going to choose a window of time, and then you're going to see data. And so what's really great about this is you're going to see the whole class's overall grade, each individual student's grade, if they've started remediation with our program, and then you're going to get a grade breakdown. So you're able to see what they answered, what the correct answer was by question. And then when you hit standard view, now you're getting grouped by standard. So you're getting a bird's eye view of not only the whole class, how the whole class is doing by standard and their proficiency, but you're getting individual students and their performances. And so now you're getting concrete data immediately to see, okay, students just completed this assessment, this assignment. Now I'm getting to see where they're at in real time and respond immediately. Jacob said it best. The longer you wait to respond, the longer it takes for you to get data, the farther away you get
Hmm.
from the point of the actual data point. So, for instance,
Right.
you got it. You turned in a test on Friday. It takes a teacher 2 weeks to get it back. By that point, you've already started a new unit. You've already started a new lesson, and instead, you could do it on the platform, get the grades immediately. Monday morning, you're remediating. and you have
Yes, I
no time to wait.
one of the biggest frustrations I had when I was beginning teacher is that exact situation where, I'd assign a test. It was a unit test. It'd take me a while to get that grading done. Sometimes, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, depending on the length of the test and the type of questions that I had. And then, I taught mostly economics, so we would have moved on from supply and demand and moved into, say, externalities or something along those lines. And then I'd have to interrupt that new unit by saying, hey, let's take a step back into this old unit so that I can reteach whatever, the class struggled with. Being able to have this quick turnaround, like you said, Will, is invaluable to not only you being able to, keep a flow in your classroom, but also to the students because they don't have to, flip that switch from one unit to the other, especially when you're building on things like so many, at least my economics class did. You had to understand supply and demand in order to understand the next unit. So we want to get them situated in this primary unit, this foundational unit, before we move on. And having this quick turnaround is extremely valuable for that.
And speaking of turnaround, the best part about this, and I know we're really pushing Lumos right now. I think it's something that I wish I would have had. The best part about this is you get this information, you're like, oh wow, my students are really struggling with this standard. Then you just take this information, you go back to my
Mm.
lessons, and you're going to be able to find the standard and you're going to be able to respond immediately. And within 10, 15 minutes, have a quality assignment ready to go for remediation. You can group it by student, have certain groups looking at this, they're working on that, and you have a cycle where you're having all the data you need, all the information you need housed in one spot, and you know immediately, okay, I can check here, get data here, maybe put it in my grade book, maybe move it to Google Classroom, take the data there, put it there. But the Lumos can be a one-stop shop to give you everything you need for assessments and assessment.
Yes, it's a great thing. And then, it doesn't take away from the other forms of assessment that teachers may have, like projects or even those little in classroom things, such as like a five finger hold up for extremely comfortable and I have no idea what's going on. So it's just an addition. It gives you that extra data, and specifically that data that is standard align and is simulating that end of year test or that end of core test that they're going to have to take because of the realities of the education world.
Yeah. So as we wrap up, Jacob, do you have any tips or tricks or maybe advice for newer teachers who are trying to navigate assessments, navigate that, as we're heading to November and December, uh, mid-year assessments are coming around the corner. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, one thing that I learned throughout my teaching career is firstly, begin with the end in mind. I know it's said all the time, and we don't like to talk about teaching to the test, but you have to know what you want the kids to know eventually in order to be able to teach them to the point that you want them to understand. So one thing that I always tried to do was before starting a unit, I would make sure I'd have my summative test lined up for that unit. So, whatever test I'm going to have them graded on, I'd be sure that I had it created. And then as we went through the unit, my second tip, other than just having the end in mind, is give them as many formative assessments as you can within time provided and, not completely tiring the kids out of assessment. I mean, these can take the forms of things like our Lumos assessments that either go over a whole standard or the custom things that Will talked about earlier, or it can be as simple as those little exit tickets where you have the student write a question that they had throughout the day and stick it in a box before they leave the classroom. Uh, I mean, formative assessments inform us as teachers on what we need to do in order to get the kids to where we need them to be. So, my two tips are have the end in mind and, give them formative assessments pretty much every day throughout the day so that you can make those on the fly decisions you need to make in order to help the students grow as much as possible.
Yeah, and I have two as well. One is control the climate of the classroom. Um, they are as stressed as you are, if not more, because they are depending on you. So be sensitive to that. Be sensitive to the fact that They will play off of your stress, but they will also be worried too. And so be kind to them and understand that they are figuring it out just as much as you are. And so uh, control the climate and they will respond in kind. Your idea is to reduce their test taking anxiety. Give them a little bit of a breather, let them know it's going to be okay. The second thing is respond quickly. And so we kind of hinted at it with the Lumos thing, but even if you're looking at it separately from Lumos, when you get those formative assessments, don't wait. Don't wait till an end of unit review day to go over it.
Mhm.
Don't wait for your time in Kahoot or Quizlet a week from now to try to get some kind of review in. Catch those students that are struggling now. Make sure you are working one-on-one with them or in group work now before you get to the unit test, and now your unit tests are starting to snowball into the next unit, into the next unit test,
Right.
and grades are constantly going down. Catch it early. Don't be afraid to take a day, pause, let them catch up on work, and work one-on-one with your students because it'll pay off as you head into summative assessments.
Yes, I completely agree. It's like, for me, it's like answering emails. If I decide to not address the emails I'm getting each day as they come in, by the end of the week, I'm going to have 100 of them that I need to answer. And like the best word to talk about it is snowball. It just gets bigger and bigger the longer you leave it. Uh, and with the way that these courses are organized, they're often foundational standards that build upon standards. So if they don't have a good understanding of that foundation, then they're not going to be able to have a good understanding of the next thing in line. So, wonderful tips, Will. Um, Anything else you'd like to say as we are closing out?
Definitely the last thing I always want to tell newer teachers is don't be afraid to ask questions. It's okay that
Yes.
you don't know everything and you don't have all the answers. Find a trusted teacher, find a trusted member of your staff who can be kind to you and walk you through it. Don't feel like you're an island. That is one of the worst things you can do as a teacher is isolate yourself and try to fight the battles alone. Don't be afraid to say you don't know. Don't be afraid to tell your students you don't know. Find out
Hmm.
and then empower yourself because now you're an active learner, like you're hoping your students are going to become active learners.
Right. Yeah. Something my mentor teacher said very early on in my career is probably the same advice that doctors give, but we don't describe teaching as, a job necessarily. We describe it as a practice. And as long as you are practicing, you get better and better and better. And because it's a practice, perfection is, it's always, to take a line from the Constitution, we can always build a more perfect practice or a more perfect union in terms of the Constitution. So, uh, as we are closing up, I just want to thank you, Will, for joining me on this and talking about something that we're both very passionate about, assessments and, helping students grow. And then for all our listeners out there, if you are more curious about the Lumos platform or about this topic in particular, please feel free to reach out to us. Or you can also, look through our catalog of other podcasts and videos that we've made to help inform you about the newest and brightest things happening here at Lumos and around the education sphere. So, Will, thank you so much for joining me today,
All right,
and
thank you so much.
we will talk to y'all again soon as we make another and continue making these Lumos Learning podcasts.